What is the most effective form of exercise, not just for shredding fat and staying lean all year round, but also for optimizing your metabolism? Now, I've got a bold stance on this, and I'm going to share that with you. But is it strength training, lifting weights? Is it cardio? Is it mobility or yoga type training? We'll get to that. But first of all, I want to reframe metabolism as well. This is the Metabolic Health series, right? And this is pillar 3 out of the 5 pillars. We're on exercise. And think of your metabolism of almost like a jazz band, right? And each member of the band is constantly adapting, right, to the inputs to make sure everything's in sync and everything comes out sounding the right way in terms of the music and what they're playing. It's the same as the metabolism. Your metabolism is constantly adapting to the 5 main pillars that I mentioned, which is sleep, stress, exercise, nutrition, and also gut health. But gut health and sleep and stress, they all tie into hormones as well. Hormones interlinked within everything we're talking about here. So let's get into it. So when it comes to exercise and how you look, right? Now, I've been lifting weights for 20 years now. And firstly, everyone listening to this most likely wants to improve the way their body looks. Nothing is going to beat that than resistance training and diet. They're the 2 most important things. Now, cardio is good for health, and it can be good as a tool, HIIT, for example, to shred that last bit of body fat, which I'll use as a tool sometimes for clients. But actually, it's diet and strength training. First, if we start with the physique and how you want to look, we know that anyway. You should know that by now in this day and age. But let's talk about longevity as well, right? Because it's all about health. Everything I talk about is like how long you're going to live. It all ties in. Muscle's the longevity organ. Cardio, still important, VO2 max. But grip strength is the strongest mortality predictor. This has been proven in many studies. What your result comes back in terms of your power you use to grip. I think it's called a dynamometer or something like that. I can't think what the machine is called. That predicts how long you're going to live. And why is that? Because think about it, when you get older, essentially, you need to be independent. If you take a fall when you're older, for example, that's how people end up dying, because they take a fall when they're older and fragile. They haven't got much muscle. Their bone density is not very good because they likely haven't done enough strength training in their lifetime. And then they end up in hospital. And what happens when you go to hospital and lie down? Whatever muscle you had is going to fall off your body. And that's when you run into big, big problems, because muscle for the immune system as well, but also just being able to get back on your feet and move again. You need strength to be able to do that. And not to mention as well, like I said, independence. When you get older, as you age, you want that the less if you don't use it, you lose it. Long story short, right? So if you don't do the things that you've always done as you get older, then your body just starts adapting and goes, okay, we don't need that then. Let's stop using it. You stop carrying heavy stuff. Okay, great. We're not going to need that muscle and that grip strength to be able to do that. The body's an adaptation machine, right? It's not going to keep muscle on your body. That's really expensive tissue. And for no reason. Everything the body does, it's extremely smart. It does it for a reason. So that's the number 1 predictor to longevity. VO2 max, right? This is a big cardiovascular predictor. But I'm going to get into my controversial points here, right? And essentially, walking and lifting still improves VO2 max. Now, my good friend, right, he's in his 50s. He's a prime example of this. He is a picture of health. I've learned a lot from him. He's had some of the biggest names, including Paul Saladino, who he's like friends with and stuff, and health experts from all over the world, all relating to metabolic health, holistic health, and everything that is not the Western side, right? When it comes to like medication, long story short, right? And, he's got a VO2 max like a 25-year-old would be happy with. He doesn't do any cardio. He cycles a tiny bit, but it's not intense. And he walks. That's just an example. But the same as me, for example. I haven't done a VO2 max test. Now, could I get the VO2 max test slightly higher into an absolute elite zone if I did some HIIT training? Maybe, maybe not. I could probably just do that with strength training. If I knew I was going to do a VO2 max, you'd be surprised at what I'd be able to do with just lifting weights. Have you ever tried doing 15 to 20 reps of squats to failure? VO2 max, that is the definition of it, right? You literally are lying on the floor. You cannot move afterwards and you cannot catch your breath, right? It's lactate threshold. So you get a lot of the benefits from, in terms of the cardiovascular benefits, all of the benefits, in my opinion, or most of them, from lifting weights properly and efficiently and appropriately for your body, and actually having a proper program where you're splitting into different phases. And like I say, you're lifting heavy, which really stretches your heart and builds your fitness up. And then, for example, lifting higher reps, like I just mentioned, and pushing yourself, pushing your cardiac muscle for those higher reps to failure, trust me, that is going to improve your VO2 max, right? So zone 2 cardio, in other words, walking or just jumping on the exercise bike, for example, and just cycling at a steady pace. In other words, you can have a conversation with someone, right? Doing that every day like I do, that's going to give you some VO2 max as well. And that's going to cover most of the benefits in terms of the cardiovascular stuff, just walking and strength training primarily. Now, here's where things get kind of practical, right? So if you're wondering how to really kind of measure your metabolic health and figure out what's holding you back, I'm going to give away on every episode of this a metabolic assessment. So if you're looking to lose fat or build muscle and optimize your metabolism, then you're going to get a free metabolic assessment, which gives you a plan for your specific body type. Everyone's body's different, and for exactly what results you want. And more importantly, the big health markers out of those pillars which are holding you back. Wherever you score in those categories, for example, stress, sleep, gut health, nutrition, all the different things that are in there, it will map that out for you. And I'll give you a personalized scoring game plan for free. So if you missed that, you're a bit of a plonker, to be honest. The link's in the show notes. So that's kind of the main things that you want to look at with exercise and longevity. Now, zone 4 or zone 5 they talk about, right, which is HIIT cardio. There's going to be some benefits from that, of course, if you want maybe to split hairs and get your VO2 max slightly higher. But again, we've not really seen we don't see a great deal of research and long-term studies on really fit, metabolically healthy people. Like Dave Feldman just said when I had him on the podcast, and he was talking about the LDL cholesterol stuff. He's just spent 2 years gathering all this data from metabolically healthy people. It's rare people do that. It's rare studies consist of that, right? So it's hard to tease it out. But I can give you another example, right? I used to do jiu-jitsu, and I was fit at the first jiu-jitsu session. I wouldn't say fitter than everyone there, right? But I was fitter than most people there. And I didn't do any cardio. Now, when I was younger, I did a lot of sports, all that kind of stuff, which may have played a little bit of a part. But again, you should be feeling like it's fitness when you're lifting weights properly, right? And effectively for your body. So let's move on to, I want to give you some examples as well with clients, right? So for example, when I take clients on, if we look at like the longevity markers in terms of visceral fat as well, right? You know, carrying fat around your internal organs, that's going to put you at a much higher risk of insulin resistance and then pre-diabetes and then eventually diabetes, for example, right? And obviously Alzheimer's, for example, has been, known now as type 3 diabetes. So you want to be dropping that visceral fat around the organs, and you want to be building muscle and getting stronger. And with my clients, the first port of call is, right, what results do you want to get? Okay, I want to be healthy and I want to lose fat and I also want to get stronger. Fantastic. Let's lift weights. I want to lose body fat. Forget about everything else. I just want to get leaner. That happens a lot, right? Okay, let's lift weights and focus on diet. And let's have a look how much activity you're doing throughout the daytime. That is the most overlooked thing, right? When it comes to you being able to get lean and stay lean in relation to metabolic health, you want to be moving as much as you can throughout the daytime. And this doesn't necessarily mean you've got to allocate walks in. For example, I'm stood up here at my stand-up desk, right? That's classed as NEAT as well. The calories you burn from standing up all day are going to be way higher than sitting down. And not just that, just for your body breaks down essentially when you sit down for prolonged periods, which is why sitting is known as the new smoking. So that's what you want to do. You want to focus on your movement, your daily activity, and that can be around the house. That can be regular movement. That can be walking and talking on your meetings, right? You don't have to sit at your desk to take all your meetings. Walk and talk, right? So factoring that into your day is the best thing you can do for longevity health. And if you want to get leaner, that is literally, I don't know, like 40% of your calories, right? Each day are going to be burnt manually, give or take. So 60% of the calories, let's just say, give or take, is going to be from basal metabolic rate, right? Which is your BMR, just to keep the lights on, your organs function and everything else. And then obviously if we look at organs like muscle, right? Muscle's the biggest organ on the body, believe it or not, right? Skeletal muscle takes up way more than skin. We think skin's the biggest organ. No, skeletal muscle. So that is going to be, when you add more muscle to your body, that's going to speed up your BMR and get your body burning more. That's automatic calorie burn, right? Just when you sat down doing nothing. Then we look at the other 40%. That's going to be manually what you burn. And around about 15% of that 40%, if you're still with me, of your opportunity to burn calories, in other words, the biggest majority of that is going to be from how much you move, how much activity you do, how much you manually burn each day. Walking is the simplest way to do that. Now, go into the gym, believe it or not, we're only going to factor that in at around about 5%. If you go and lift weights, or even if you go and do cardio, that's only going to work out for the actual day around about 5% of your total calorie burn. But that's the beautiful thing, again, about resistance training, lifting weights, is the afterburn, right? Muscle protein synthesis. When you lift weights, or even if you do body weight, some form of consistent strength training where you're consistently getting stronger. In other words, it's actually super simple, really not complicated. You add in weight to the bar each week, or increasing the dumbbell weight, or even increasing the resistance bands that you're using so they're heavier. Do that week on week consistently. You're going to get stronger and build muscle. There's obviously a few other variables that come into that, but that's pretty much it. Very, very simple. And if you're doing that, then you're going to speed your metabolism up. If you do that consistently, if you do that pretty much most days, some form of strength training, then the afterburn lasts for about, up to 3 days afterwards. But generally, the peak is going to be like anywhere between, say, 12 to 24 hours, right? Roughly, in terms of the peak afterburn, which is when your body's burning more calories, right? It's known as muscle protein synthesis. So that's why I say, when it comes to cardio and resistance training, right? Imagine you go to the gym and you walk on the treadmill, or you do some form of cardio for, let's just say, an hour, just round it off to an hour, versus you go lift weights for an hour. Now, at the time, forget about how much calories you burn. Just put it this way. If you burn calories for an hour from doing cardio, then that's about, let's just say, give or take, around about 5% of your day, right? Out of the 24 hours, give or take, roughly. Whereas if you lift weights afterwards, say 10 to 12 hours after, rounded off to 12 hours, muscle protein synthesis is at its highest, give or take anyway. Your body's burning way more calories afterwards, which basically means for 50% of your day, you're burning more calories versus that 5%. So you got to look at the EPOC, right? It's exercise post-oxygen consumption. That's what it's called, the long-term thing, the long scientific word for afterburn, right? So look at that with strength training as well. So all that to say, 15% of your daily activity, of your calories burned is going to be how much you move in each day. 5% is going to be what you do in the gym. Let's just say that's 20%. And then we've got around about 10% left, right? Let's round it off to say 70%, 60 to 70%. Let's say 70% BMR, just to keep the lights on, automatically how much your body burns to keep you alive. 30%, then you've got 15%, which is just how much you move, 5% from training. And then I believe you've got about 5 to 10%. Let's just round it off to 10%, which is your thermic effect of food, right? So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because I'm going to do the other pillar on nutrition. But long story short, the thermic effect of things like protein, it costs your body energy to digest protein. The same as fiber has a high thermic effect, right? So that's also when your body's burning calories, right? Now, you could say that's automatic, right? As your body's digesting the food, but it's not. It's manual. It's in your waking, you're awake. It's just something you do consciously, right? You eat. So anyway, that's kind of that broken down for you anyway, in a nutshell. So let's look into like the science behind resistance training versus cardio versus other types of training. So like I just said, resistance training is obviously going to build lean mass. Sorry, I was going all over the shop here. Going back to what I do with clients, right? I went off on a tangent then. So with clients, okay, I want to lose fat. Wow, that was a big tangent. I want to lose fat. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to focus on strength training and diet, right? And then how much activity you're doing throughout the daytime. And that's where I went into that rabbit hole of 15%. Once we've looked at those three kind of big, obviously sleep, yeah, all those things are, obvious. But they're the things that move the needle forward, right? And there was a study done as well. I've mentioned this before. They had a group, I think it was only a 12-week study, but it still highlights what's going on here. They had one group where it was diet and it was strength training. The other group was cardio and diet. And then the other group was cardio, resistance training, and diet. So that's what they were doing. They were dialing all of those things in. So there's three groups. The group that came in first place in terms of weight loss was diet and resistance training. And I think they all did the same thing with diet. I think they controlled the diet. They had the same amount of protein, et cetera, et cetera. So diet and resistance training, they lost way more weight. I can't remember how much it was, body fat anyway. I'm not sure if it was weight, but it was definitely body fat. And then second place was strength training, diet, and cardio. Last place was cardio and diet, right? Cardio it sucks for fat loss, right? I'm just going to say it how it is. Long-term, sustainable fat loss, it sucks for fat loss. look at anyone that does lots of cardio, right? And this is not to take anything away from anyone. Everyone's free to do what they want to do, what works for them, right? But if we're talking purely about metabolic health now, and we're talking about bone density, we're talking about living longer, we're talking about losing fat around the waist, we're talking about how you look aesthetically. We all know, if you look at a sprinter, for example, right? Someone who does 100-meter sprints in the Olympics versus, and this is an extreme example, but it highlights, versus, you know, a 5K runner or even like a 10K or marathon runner. The marathon runner is super skinny, probably weighs as much as my leg, you know, maximum. Then you've got the sprinter who's jacked and shredded, right? Now, when you're doing sprinting and you're doing power-based movements like sprinters do, that requires strength. So it goes back to what I was saying. Explosive power requires strength. It's the phosphocreatine system they're using, right? It's the signal, which is strength and muscle. That's what they need on their body to be able to compete like they do at that level. So that just gives you an example. And that's very simple how it works, right? So it's all about strength training, movement, and using cardio more as a tool, right? Cardio can be a great tool. And look, I'm not anti-cardio, right? I am just anti-bullshit, basically, right? So with cardio, it can actually help with strength training when used appropriately. So if you've done a little bit of cardio where it's not too intense, maybe zone 2, maybe even if you threw in like one zone 4, one zone 5 a week, where you're doing sprints once a week, super intense. As long as you're recovering enough, you're not overdoing it with the strength training, you're hitting the sweet spot, which most people don't. This is the problem when people add in cardio and strength training. They just overtrain and people are not aware. Trust me, the level I'm at now and how many people I've coached and how aware I get clients to be and how much I've learned myself as well from optimizing absolutely everything from sleep to nutrition to literally bio, you name it. I've done it all, right? And I've tracked it all. I've measured it all. Long story short, even I overtrain because I love the feeling of lifting weights. So that's why right now I'm doing 2 full body workouts. I've stuck to this. It's been very hard to do. This is all tying into what I'm going to say. And I'm not trying to be like the kind of anti-cardio, you know, guy here, or trying to be the fun police. If you find cardio fun and you're a bit strange like that, then I'm not trying to be the fun police here. But even I overtrain, right? So now it's almost impossible. Well, it's not impossible. I still did it the other day. My 1 full body one, I crossed the line. I spent too long in there. And it's very easy to do. So most people, they just haven't got the awareness and the skills that I've learned along the way. And they just do it because they enjoy it, which is totally fine. I'm all for people being consistent with exercise and being healthy, right? I'm all for it. Mental health, all those things. But if we want to fine tune and optimize things here, on brand here, right? Optimize your body. But if we want to fine tune things, we've got to look at what works. And we've also got to look at research. So back to what I was saying there. Resistance training builds lean mass, which obviously raises your resting metabolic rate. So when you're sat on your ass, you're burning more calories. It obviously improves insulin sensitivity as well, right? And I don't know if you know this, there was a big study done on this. It removes, so they did a study on the type of exercise which is best for the heart. And how they monitored that was the types of fat that build up around the heart, right? So you've got I forgot the names of them now. I think it's not visceral. One of them's I forgot the names anyway. There's 2 different types of fat which build up around the heart, and strength training was the only type that actually reduced or removes both types of the fat around the heart, whereas cardio did remove one of them, but it didn't actually remove the other one. So strength training is even better for your heart, and it improves insulin sensitivity again because muscle is it's metabolically active tissue, right? So look at it like when you lift weights and you get stronger and you build a lot of muscle on your body. Look at it like a sink almost, right? So you lift weights, right? And then afterwards, right, because you've depleted your glycogen levels and because you've sent that muscle building signal and muscle protein synthesis is then taking place, right? Which basically means your body is going through that recovery process to repair your muscle and to help your nervous system recover. What happens then is you've got a sink then to fill up, right? So when you eat, let's just say more food, more carbs, you've got this sink, which is basically, you didn't have a sink before, long story short, right? This is not a very good analogy. This is off the top of the head. But you've got that sink there now, and then you can fill that sink up then, right? That's your insulin basically filling up before it spills out into the blood and into the fat cells and stuff, right? That was off the top of the head, right? But you can see where I'm going with that, right? So it improves insulin sensitivity, removes both types of fat from the heart. And yeah, like I said, in terms of I haven't mentioned this, but mitochondria, when it comes to walking, zone 2, just walking daily, right? And doing brisk walks helps as well, right? Because doing a brisk walk like uphill, that's probably going to take you more to zone 3. But just look at cardio like you can have a conversation with someone, essentially, right? That's zone 2. That's the best way to say it. That's going to really help with calorie output, like I said, stress management, and actually increasing mitochondria, right? Which are the power plants within the cells, just like strength training does, and just like HIIT training can do. Again, with HIIT training, most people don't do it right. So from what I've seen, people say to me, 90% of the time, they say they're doing HIIT training. They're not doing HIIT training. They're doing cardio, essentially. And they're doing aerobic cardio, dipping into anaerobics, dipping back into aerobic. They're not doing HIIT. Proper HIIT, for example, let me give you an example of HIIT now. So you've got 30 seconds, right? Like your life depends on it, on a treadmill, for example, right? Flat or 1% incline, like not much incline, basically flat. Literally like you're running away from a tiger, right? Don't do this so if you've got any issues with your knees or you've never done any cardio. Don't go and do this straight away now, right? If you haven't done any high intensity cardio, disclaimer, you might have a heart attack, right? Or injure yourself. But if you did that and you went all out, like your life depended on it for 30 seconds, rest as long as you need. And by the way, if you're resting for 30 seconds after that and then sprinting again, you're not sprinting, you're not working hard enough, right? Simple as that. Rest as long as you need. If you need 10 minutes rest in between those 30 second intervals, totally fine. 6 sets of 30 seconds. Literally as fast, nothing left in the tank. Everything you've got, right? Do that 6 times, that's proper HIIT, right? That's high intensity interval training going right to the top zone, zone 5 or wherever it is. And that's essentially proper HIIT training. It's just an example of it. Most people are not doing that. Simple, right? And what that type of HIIT does is it requires strength, it requires power, and it's sending the same signal of strength training. Now, I would like to say, treat HIIT like a training phase, right? So for example, with clients, I'll do roughly about 4 weeks each training phase and treat it like that. Your body will adapt to it. 3-4 weeks, that's all you need to do. Right. But you have to do it appropriately. If you do, like most people just, I'm 38, right? If I do a HIIT now, it's going to ruin me, right? I'll give you an example. I did some sprints on the beach the other day. Did it one day, felt great, right? It was probably like zone 4. Went straight to zone 5 the next day, right? Went absolutely all out, knackered all day, right? It is what it says on the tin. It's high intensity, right? It takes it out of your body, right? So you have to build up to it and build your way up slowly. So long story short, cardio alone, right? It's limited, right? It doesn't protect you, protect muscle long term. In fact, cardio can be catabolic, right? If you're just doing long, slow runs, for example, loads of long endurance type cardio. Again, if you enjoy it, fantastic. Keep doing it. This is not for you. If you love doing cardio and you're healthy, I'm really happy for you. But if you're looking to, live longer, look better, improve metabolic health, it's actually catabolic, right? So it actually sends a signal to pare down tissue, right? That's what cardio does. It's anti-tissue, whereas strength training, when done properly, having enough protein, it's anabolic. It's the anabolic pathway. It's pro-tissue. It's build muscle, get stronger, live longer, right? Look at it that way. So that's why I get clients to stick to zone 2 instead of you. And I'll get them, what I was going to say earlier is, it's rare this happens, but if they've got a holiday coming up and they're like, look, I want to shred this last bit of fat real quick, every now and then I'll throw in HIIT as a tool for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks max. Very rare though, because we do that through diet, right? For example, the last time I got absolutely shredded for a comp back in 2019, the last comp I did, and it's the last comp I'll ever do, I didn't do any cardio. I just walked, right? I just did an extra 30 minutes of walking every day, no cardio at all, like 4% body fat, wherever I was, absolutely shredded. You don't need to do cardio for fat loss. It's just diet and strength training and movement, just creating a calorie deficit. That's all it comes down to. Everything I'm talking about, if you want to get lean, it's just creating a calorie deficit. And the most sustainable way to do that and the healthiest way is going to be from what? Walking as much as you can, diet, dialing that in. That's the big one. I'm going to cover a whole episode on this. And then obviously strength training, right? So look, I'm going to kind of wrap this up with a practical framework. And essentially, if you look at it like resistance training, like I say, I'm doing 2 full body strength training sessions in the gym a week. But how I do this with clients is there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of research on this now to say training frequency is the most important thing. I haven't gone right down the rabbit hole of strength training. I'm going to do more episodes on this now because a lot of you have been asking me to do more on strength training, like what type of movements are going to get the best results in terms of exercises in the gym, like squats, deadlifts, all those kind of things, and just like lots of different nuance going on there, so I'm going to do another episode on that. But long story short, I'll get my clients, if they're working out from home, 2 women come to mind, right? One of them's only been on the program for like 7 weeks, killing it. She's dropped like 8 pounds, smashing it. She's stronger. Like I said before, even her menstrual cycles come back for the first time in 4 years, right? And basically she's doing 4 25-minute sessions a week. Got another woman who's doing 3, she's been doing 3 40-minute sessions a week at home. These both train at home as well. And she's been doing that for almost 90 days for the whole program. Great results. This other woman, I'll shout her out actually because she listens. Ricky, shout out to Ricky, legend. She's almost 90 days in, and I've lost count of how much she's lost now. I think she's dropped around probably about 10 pounds or something now, but she's dropped loads of it. That's the big thing, see? And I even had a chat with another client today, and she was saying, look, my weight plateaued this week, actually went up a pound. But I'm happy because I've just fitted into jeans that I haven't fitted into for ages. So that now I'm really happy, right? And that's what you got to pay attention to. So my other client, shout out to Ricky. I'm not going to call the other one's name out. She likes to remain anonymous. But Ricky, she's dropped 10 pounds and she's fitting into her clothes again. Everyone's noticing, which is a bonus. But I was just chatting to her the other day, and she's doing 3 sessions a week, right? And now after 12 weeks, to ramp up the training volume, we're now going to add in bands. I said to her, Ricky, are you confident you can do 2 10-minute band sessions on top of these 3 40-minute full body strength training sessions? She was like, yeah, that's easy. Great. Extra 20 minutes. That'll ramp up results. So it's always a case, what people do is they throw the kitchen sink in right at the start. You want to build it up slowly. So less is more, because you always got to look at, 80-90% of people, they don't stay consistent for a year, let alone for the rest of their life. They don't care. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you were consistent for a whole year through all seasons, right? Most people are not. And you have to have a strategy to what you're doing. You have to be hitting the sweet spot in the gym with intensity. There's so much nuance to it. And do you know what? I used to say to people like ChatGPT can do it. No, it can't. ChatGPT doesn't know your body. It'll get there, AI. But even now, it's like the amount of nuance and wisdom that comes into me creating a training program for my clients is actually a lot to it, and the feedback that I get. And then not to mention, there's even way more variance there in terms of nutrition, right? In terms of what foods people can tolerate, how people respond in terms of insulin sensitivity. Some people can eat more carbs. Some people can't get away with many carbs. Some people can actually, they do better with higher fats. They digest it well. They feel on top form. Others feel bloated, sluggish, brain. Like there's so much to it from person to person, right? So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now because I'm going on tangents here, left, right, and center. Resistance training. If you can do that 2 to 4 times per week, if you can ideally lift some heavy weights, 2 to 4 times per week, that's going to cover it really. And I would do the full body. If you're doing 2 or 3 sessions per week, do full body. If you're doing 4 sessions, you can still do, you could do 2 full bodies, 1 upper, 1 lower, or you could do 2 uppers and 2 lowers. As long as you're hitting, regardless of what you do with resistance training, hit every body part at least twice per week. Stop 1 to 3 reps shy of failure, basically, right? Keep it very, very simple. So that's number 1 in terms of hierarchy. Strength training should be the cornerstone of what you do with exercise. If you want to live longer, look better, improve metabolic health, then you've got walking, right? Just every day. I would like to give a ballpark range of 7K steps minimum as a daily average. Up to say 7 to 10K steps is a good number to give yourself. But look, if you're someone who doesn't even track their steps, start tracking your steps, because then you'll know where you're at and you can measure it and you can improve on it. And even if you add 2,000 steps a day, that's going to get you moving in the right direction, right? If you're someone who does 2,000 steps a day, for example, doing 7,000 is too much to start. Increase by 2,000 steps, or do an extra 15 to 20-minute walk a day. Stay consistent with that until it's locked in and it feels easy. So you're just that person who moves. You're that person who walks in the morning. It's just what you do, like you brush your teeth. You go for your walk before work. It has to be cemented in until it's in the subconscious mind, right? Even simple things like walking. And then an optional thing here, right, is HIIT. And I'm going to quickly touch on mobility and flexibility and stuff as well, which is obviously crucial. HIIT, training, I would say the best way to look at it, right? This is the best way I like to say, and even from my own experience. Do cardio you enjoy doing. In other words, if you enjoy playing sports, go and do some cardio you enjoy doing. Do you enjoy playing tennis? Great, do that, right? Volleyball, is it bloody, I don't know, dancing? Is it salsa? What is it? go do some cardio that you enjoy doing, I would say, because, people have limited time. If you're spending an hour, like I said earlier, going to the gym and do an hour on the treadmill, running or cross trainer, you're throwing results in the bin, literally, right? So if you've got time to train, resistance training, strength training, cardio, have fun with it. And you hit two birds with one stone then, right? You're getting that social interactions part as well. If you can do sports that involve other people, right? Which is all sports, actually. What am I talking about? You know what I mean? Then do that. But HIIT training, you could sprinkle some of that in as a tool, right? But you got to do it properly. And I think it's massively overrated. You get your heart rate's up for sustained periods when you're lifting weights, move plenty. I think it's massively overrated. And in fact, I would say HIIT training for most people is a negative benefits for HIIT training, because it basically it's the bathtub's overflowing. The stress bucket, should I say, is overflowing. It's too intense and it's too much to recover from on top of normal life stress and everything else that people do. So mobility, you can never do enough. Now, what is mobility? Long story short, it's a combination of flexibility and strength. The good thing with strength training, lifting weights, when you're doing free weights, you're doing fundamental movements like deadlift, squats, overhead shoulder press, you know what I mean? Rows, those kind of fundamental movements. It requires mobility to do them properly anyway, right? Which is another conversation. You can do squats with terrible form and you're actually going to do more harm than good. But if you do it with good form and you learn how to do it properly, you're getting mobility out of it anyway, because squatting and deadlifting, those two things are king and queen of all exercises to get bang for your buck for muscle gain, but also going back to longevity. You got to pick things up from the floor, right? That's just a natural thing you have to do. Farmers' carries are underrated as well. Grab 2 heavy dumbbells or even a trap bar and walk really, really heavy, right? That's going to test out your grip strength. Very functional movement, right? When you're carrying the shopping, especially as we age, right? You want to be able to do those things as you get older. But yeah, you can never do enough mobility. And this is something I slack on, but that's a whole nother podcast. Basically, with mobility, the way I do it, and I get clients to do it, is before training. I'll get them to prime their body before lifting, and that's how we cover most of the mobility. And I need to do more of it, basically. So yeah, mobility is really, really important. You can never do enough of it, but it's just such a long conversation. I'm not going to waffle on about that here. Being able to, stretching, mobility ties into that. Like flexibility, you can be really flexible, have no strength. And then that means you're not mobile, because you've got flexibility. For example, gymnasts who can squat really deep, but they haven't got strength in that range of motion, which basically means they're not mobile, right? Because they've got flexibility without strength. They don't own the range of motion because they haven't got strength. And that's how you can end up getting injured and you get problems, and it's not good for longevity. Then you look at the other extreme case of like a bodybuilder, right? Steroided out. Never does any mobility, jacked, right? Turns his whole body around when he looks around, yeah? He hasn't got good mobility. He's got really tight, overactive muscles, which he doesn't stretch out, right? So he's also not got good mobility because his muscles are super tight, unlike the gymnast, who's got elongated, flexible muscles. He's got super tight muscles, so that's a disaster waiting to happen as well. So it's that happy medium, but I'll have to do a whole nother podcast on that because mobility is actually very kind of complex, really, but just priming your body before you lift, that I coach clients through, is the best way to do it. So I'm going to wrap this up with, I want to give you my peak performance blueprint for free, right? Which is a anabolic training program. It's going to last 9 to 12 weeks. You're going to get insane results. It's the same methods and training system that I use. It's not the same program, obviously, because it's very nuanced, like I said, but it's the same concepts that I use with clients. You can grab that for free, the peak performance blueprint, by clicking in the show notes. I think I've added something else into that peak performance blueprint as well. I can't remember what it was, but it's gold. And if you want to know how to train properly and get maximum results in a short amount of time, click that link and grab that for free. And then finally, I want you to check, don't forget the Metabolic Assessment as well. Get a free one of them, links in the show notes. Finally, check out, if you're on YouTube now, check out this next episode. I did one where I went deep on all the stuff I just touched on then in terms of how to maximize results in the gym, precisely what to do. So check out this next episode here. And yeah, a lot of you don't subscribe to the channel. Like you watch it on YouTube and you listen on Spotify, but you don't follow or subscribe. So please do this one thing. Follow on Spotify, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, although not many people listen on there anymore, and subscribe on YouTube, right? So you don't miss out on this amazing content. I've got loads of amazing stuff coming your way and some great guests lined up as well. All right, over and out.